Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're navigating one of the most volatile and, frankly, complex territories in human interaction, long-term relationships. Specifically, we're diving into the dynamics of emotional unavailability, the fear of true commitment, and those frustrating red flags that seem to pop up just as things start feeling serious.
Exactly. And our mission today is to move past the typical listicles and, the anecdotal warning signs you read online. We have gathered sources across psychology, behavioral neuroscience, and some really rigorous longitudinal studies to understand the core mechanisms behind why people pull away.
The why.
The why commitment stalls, and what scientifically predicts relationship decline.
Yep.
We want to arm you, the listener, with knowledge about what's actually happening under the surface.
And we have a fascinating stack of research here. It covers 4 essential areas. So first, we're defining the behavior itself.
Yeah.
What is commitment phobia? What does emotional unavailability actually look like in practice? Second, we'll analyze the tactics, some common, some subtle, but all high-severity red flags that indicate a real pattern of damage.
Then we connect those behaviors directly to the deep drivers, which are adult attachment style.
Right. And finally, we'll look at the hard science, the research that predicts who gets into a relationship in the first place, and, maybe more importantly, what predicts an eventual breakup.
Okay, let's unpack this and start right at the core of it all, avoidance. So when we talk about commitment issues, we're talking about a fundamental, almost, like a reflexive fear of long-term dedication.
Right.
And the sources highlight this isn't just a romantic thing. It's a deep-seated resistance to obligation that can show up anywhere. Planning a career, buying a house, even just committing to a fitness goal.
That's a great point because the root cause is often psychological. We're talking underlying anxieties, a profound fear of abandonment, or just this powerful tendency towards self-sabotage when things feel too good.
Yeah.
And the most common, and I'd say most maddening manifestation of this is what's called the push-pull cycle. The push-pull dynamic, that agonizing hot and cold behavior. Can you break down what's happening internally? What's driving that switch?
Certainly. So the initial hot phase is what you could call the thrill of the hunt. The commitment-phobic individual can be incredibly seductive, romantic. They appear utterly invested.
All in.
Completely. They are fully present in that pursuit. But the moment you reciprocate that energy, the moment they feel that expectation of a sustained, deep connection, well, the emotional alarm bells just go off.
And the switch flips.
The switch flips. Internally, they are constantly, and I mean constantly, thinking about their backdoor way out. They need to maintain a sense of protection and control, so they engineer a disappearing act. The pursuit is over because the vulnerability just got too high.
What I found so draining for the partner reading through this is that meticulous, almost obsessive process of picking out flaws. They turn into a private investigator of your shortcomings.
Yes, it's a key behavior. It's a manifestation of their internal quest for emotional safety. They operate under this mistaken belief that if they can find every single flaw, if they can prove you aren't perfect, then they somehow gain control over the relationship's outcome.
So they create micro-criticisms.
Micro-criticisms, exactly. They focus on minor irritations, they compare you negatively to other people, or they find reasons why your success might actually be a threat to them. If they can disqualify you in their own mind first,
Then they feel safe. They can manage the pain when it ends because they knew it all along.
you've got it. It reframes everything. The criticism was never about the dirty dish. It was about justifying the emotional distance they needed to feel in control.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's shift a little bit to emotional unavailability, or EU. The sources are very clear that EU partners often dictate the pace and direction of the relationship entirely on their terms.
Yes, because their comfort zone is, let's say, shallow water. They are masters of avoidance. So you should look for conversations that are consistently surface level. They struggle deeply, sometimes even aggressively, to discuss their own feelings.
And if you try to bring it up,
If you attempt to initiate an emotional talk about the future, their vulnerability, a conflict, they will immediately pull away. Or they'll redirect the emotional focus entirely back onto you.
and the vagueness of intention, that just sends the partner into a spiral of anxiety.
Absolutely. They avoid commitment labels like the plague. They use vague statements about what they want, about future plans, creating those frustrating mixed messages that keep their partner guessing and, anxious. What's really fascinating from the neuroscience angle here is that this deliberate avoidance of intimacy actually disrupts our natural human bonding process.
You mentioned oxytocin earlier, the bonding hormone. How does avoidance actually block that biological mechanism?
Well, for an emotional connection to deepen, you need vulnerability. Vulnerability requires trust, and it's trust that triggers the release of oxytocin, which solidifies that bond. By constantly keeping conversations shallow and maintaining that emotional distance, they never engage the neural pathways that are necessary for that deep biochemical connection to form.
So they're actively blocking it.
They are actively blocking the biological mechanism that's designed to move a relationship toward intimacy and security. It ensures the bond stays fragile, which is exactly what they need for a quick exit.
Okay, that gives us the behavioral foundation. Now let's turn up the volume and look at the actual warning signs, the true red flags. And the sources stress, a true red flag is a consistent pattern. It's not an isolated bad mood or one single disagreement. It's a pattern that involves an outright unwillingness to acknowledge the negative impact they're having on you.
That distinction between a pattern and an incident is so vital for you to grasp. And if the pattern is consistent and it escalates, that's when we see the high-severity flags. The most obvious one is controlling behavior, which can take some really insidious forms. This isn't just ordering you around, it's dictating who you spend your time with, monitoring your texts or social media.
Without permission.
Without permission, or making critical life decisions for you without any consultation.
And the sources specifically called out the severity of financial control.
Yes. Limiting a partner's access to money to control their independence is a major, major red flag. It traps the partner in a state of dependence. Another flag that often comes before conflict is a systemic communication breakdown. This isn't just an awkward silence, it's the consistent use of the silent treatment as a tool to punish or manipulate.
Or just refusing to talk about anything important.
A flat-out refusal to discuss any important topics related to the future, like merging finances or moving in together.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting and often deceptive. Love bombing. This overwhelming display of affection and gifts in the early stages feels intoxicating, but the sources warn it's often a tactic.
It is. It's often cited as a tactic to gain control and create dependency, and to do it incredibly quickly. The goal is to overwhelm your ability to critically assess the situation. They essentially put you in their debt emotionally, creating an imbalance. So when the manipulation starts later on, you're already invested. You're thinking, but they were so amazing at the start. I must be misinterpreting this.
And we can't overlook that very confusing sign of insecurity projection, when the emotionally unavailable partner accuses you of being untrustworthy.
It's a classic defense mechanism. They're taking their own deep-seated fear of getting hurt, their own inability to trust the process of intimacy, and they are just dumping that emotion entirely onto you.
So it's safer for them to blame you.
It feels much safer if they can blame the anxiety on your imagined infidelity than to acknowledge their own terror of closeness.
So if you, the listener, are coping with these patterns, the key insight seems to be self-awareness and intuition. Stop focusing on what they say and pay attention to what they consistently do. Ask yourself, does this partnership's pattern of behavior leave me feeling constantly drained, confused, and criticized? Or do I feel supported, safe, and valued? That self-check is absolutely critical.
Exactly. And listen to the people who love you. If your trusted friends or family who see the situation clearly from the outside are voicing concerns about how you're being treated, you have to listen.
Now, we need to dive into the deeper drivers, the scaffolding that holds up all these behaviors, attachment styles. We're going to focus on the two avoidance styles, which can look similar on the surface, but are fundamentally motivated by different needs.
Yes, and we have to unpack the difference because understanding the mechanism is key. Let's start with the dismissive avoidant, or DA. Think of the DA as building a high, emotionally impenetrable fortress around themselves. They are driven by an intense desire for total independence. They have a high self-view, low other view.
Meaning they think they're fine on their own.
Exactly. They believe they're perfectly fine on their own, and they minimize their need for other people. Their core philosophy is basically, intimate relationships are unnecessary, and they just complicate my life.
So their push-pull is really about a need for space and emotional autonomy. But then you have the fearful avoidant, or FA, sometimes called disorganized, and their internal world is way more chaotic.
The FA it's like a haunted house. They are defined by this profound internal conflict. They desperately crave intimacy. They truly believe connection is the only path to happiness, but they are simultaneously terrified of vulnerability and rejection.
Because their past experiences taught them intimacy equals pain.
Intimacy inevitably leads to pain and abandonment. And this internal war results in the most dramatic push-pull dynamic. They approach because they want closeness, then they panic and violently push away because they fear that impending emotional destruction.
That sounds exhausting to be that conflicted all the time. It makes sense then that we see these styles reflected in the research on dating frequency.
It does. The data reveals this powerful paradox. Both high attachment avoidance and high anxiety are associated with a decrease in the number of relationships people get into,
So the people who need it most, or fear it most,
are the least likely to even enter the healthy dating pool compared to secure individuals. They're just held back by their own internal coping mechanisms.
and for anyone focused on just getting dates, there's a crucial finding about physical attractiveness that really highlights the difference between starting something and maintaining it.
Right. Physical attractiveness is demonstrably beneficial for getting dates and dating frequently, no question. It gets you in the door. However, the sources show very clearly that once more information about a partner is acquired, physical attractiveness does not predict the maintenance or the length of that relationship.
So the long-term health is determined by something else.
It's determined by behavioral and emotional compatibility, not that initial spark.
So the first impression only lasts so long. This leads us perfectly into relationship goals, which researchers use as a key predictor of stability. You brought up this idea of approach goals versus avoidance goals.
Yes, and this distinction is highly predictive of satisfaction over time. Individuals with approach goals are focused on pursuing positive outcomes. They're trying to maximize fun, intimacy, and shared growth. And this orientation translates to greater daily and long-term satisfaction for both partners, largely because it fosters stronger positive emotions. They see their partner and their relationship as a source of joy.
And the opposite, the avoidance mentality.
Avoidance goals focus solely on preventing negative outcomes. They're trying to avoid conflict, avoid boredom, avoid criticism.
Can you give us an example?
Simple one. An approach-oriented person cleans the kitchen to create a pleasant space for their partner. An avoidance-oriented person cleans the kitchen specifically to prevent their partner from complaining about the mess.
The action is the same, but the internal motivation is completely different.
And that motivation matters profoundly. These preventative avoidance goals are consistently associated with decreased relationship quality over time. They might keep the peace day to day, no one is fighting over the dishes, but the lack of authentic, proactive, positive energy just erodes the relationship's foundation over the years.
This distinction between short-term peace and long-term erosion is a powerful segue into how researchers actually track commitment decline. They often look at a metric called commitment to wed.
Right, researchers need a benchmark for a sustained high-level commitment. Commitment to wed is often used to track a decline that lasts for at least 1 month. It's an effective measuring stick because it represents a high-level goal that requires planning and stability.
And once that measure declines, they can start comparing factors.
Exactly. And this leads us to the critical difference between the frequency of negative factors and the intensity of them. This is what separates a relationship that's declining but recovers from one that just dissolves.
Okay, break that down.
Couples who experience a period of declining commitment but ultimately stay together are characterized by the frequent reporting of negative factors. Things like decreased interaction, relational uncertainty, maybe paying a bit more attention to alternative partners. These things happen often, but they're generally manageable.
So these are just the common bumps in the road. What then predicts the actual breakup?
It's the intensity of those negative experiences. The severity of the event is the deciding factor, not how often the small issues crop up. For instance, actual serious sexual infidelity is an intense, high-severity experience. It's a much stronger predictor of a breakup than the frequent lower-severity experience of just, looking at an attractive person at a bar. Severity is what differentiates structural damage from a simple dent.
On the positive side, though, if you are single and you're seeking a healthy commitment, the sources highlight this concept of commitment readiness. It's like an internal switch.
It is. Feeling ready when you're single is a powerful psychological predictor of entering a relationship. It translates directly into active pursuit behaviors. You hold a higher ideal of closeness for a future partner, you actively consider dating, you pay more attention to your appearance, and you use initiation tactics like flirting or physical touch.
So readiness is active, not passive.
It's about internal alignment and active pursuit, not just passively waiting for something to happen.
And finally, let's briefly put commitment avoidance into the broader context of the quarter-life crisis.
The quarter-life crisis is highly prevalent in early adulthood, peaking around ages 25 to 33. The anxiety around romantic commitment is a huge contributor to the severity of this crisis, especially for women in that age bracket.
And for men.
For men, career uncertainty tends to be the defining crisis. But these commitment fears are deeply linked to broader anxieties about life stability for everyone. So, after absorbing all this information, the path to overcoming these destructive commitment patterns, whether they're yours or your partner's, it always begins with profound self-awareness. Self-awareness of your emotional patterns, followed by transparent communication of your needs and expectations. We know these avoidance patterns often trace back to deep-seated family instability, growing up in volatile environments, or maybe loveless, emotionally silent homes. The patterns were learned, which means they can be unlearned.
And if you're the partner on the receiving end of this, the ultimate takeaway has to be self-preservation and clarity. You have to recognize that certain severe red flags, an unwillingness to ever take responsibility or a consistent pattern of behavior that makes you feel fundamentally unsafe, that signals a climate incompatibility. You're looking for a climate that is safe, respectful, and growth-oriented. And if that climate is consistently poisoned by push, pull, or control, you just can't thrive there. We discussed how financial security can definitely alleviate some practical relationship stressors, but the research is adamant. Lasting satisfaction relies on mutual respect, empathetic understanding, and genuine affection. Money alone doesn't provide that foundation.
No, it doesn't. If the commitment you're seeking is primarily driven by comfort or convenience or financial stability, the partnership might achieve a high level of functional success. But it's going to struggle profoundly with authentic connection. It risks profound feelings of isolation, even within the relationship. And this leaves you with a final provocative thought to consider. Is the commitment you are seeking built on a foundation of emotional health and mutual respect, a partnership built to withstand conflict, or is it merely a structure of convenience that will only stand until the first emotional storm hits?